Good morning. It is September 19th, 2023. We're going to do the New York Times Daily Newsletter. Today's propagandist, David Leonhardt. We're covering the latest Times investigation into child labor, as well as the prisoner release in Iran, Hunter Biden, and Ozempic. Child labor and a broken border. It sounds like something out of an earlier century. Tens of thousands of children in the U.S. spanning all 50 states work full-time, often in overnight shifts and in dangerous jobs. The adults in their communities, including executives at major companies like Purdue Farms and Tyson Food, whose slaughterhouses are cleaned by the young teenagers, look the other way. Government officials in state capitals in Washington allow it to happen. For the past year and a half, my colleague Hannah Dreer has been reporting on the explosion of child labor among many young migrants who have recently arrived in this country. Her latest story, which tells the story of Marcus Cox, a 15-year-old who was maimed last year in a chicken plant in rural Virginia run by Purdue, has just published in the Times Magazine. The story exposes the human cost in this country's broken immigration system over the past 15 years. Entering the U.S. without legal permission has become easier, especially for children. I thought it was secure. I thought the borders were secure. A 2008 law intended to protect children from harm on the Mexican side of the border has meant that children can usually enter the country without documentation. As Hannah writes, in the 15 years since, the carve-out has become widely known in Central America, where it shapes the calculations of the destitute families. Likewise, a 2015 ruling by a federal judge made it easier for children to enter the country with their families, as a recent New York story by Dexter Filkins explained. These policy changes aren't the only reasons that migration by adults, too, has recently increased. The collapse of Venezuela's economy and a rise in global poverty during the corona pandemic also played a role, as does perception in Latin America that the Biden administration is less vigilant about border security than either the Trump or Obama administrations. So we're just openly admitting it. But we're going to say the border is secure. An open secret, whatever the cause. Migrant children are arriving in a country that's often unable or at least unwilling to protect them. After unaccompanied children come to the U.S., authorities place them with so-called sponsors, adults who are supposed to care for the children and ensure they attend school. Frequently, though, the sponsors allow children to work full-time, knowing that their parents need money and that working children can wire home. The children use false documents to get the jobs, and employers accept them, even when they're obviously incorrect. In many communities, child labor has become an open secret. Yet this modern version of child labor brings some terrible costs that led this country to ban the practice in the early 20th century. Children are exhausted. Many don't graduate high school and learn the skills necessary to find decent paying work as adults. The high school doesn't give you any skills at all. It teaches you that, DNA, that mitochondria is the powerhouse of DNA. That's about it. It doesn't do anything. Like, I worked at McDonald's for 18 years as a manager, and the kids that come out of high school, they can't even count change. School's useless. Some, like Marcos, suffer gruesome injuries while working jobs intended for adults. In response to Hannah's reporting, companies like Purdue and Tyson have said they do not tolerate child labor, but their actions suggest otherwise. And although the Biden administration responded to her initial story by increasing enforcement, it has so far fined only subcontractors for employing children rather than brand-name companies. Yeah, exactly, because corporate law is set so where corporations aren't responsible for anything. And the 5 biggest corporations are Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon. They all lean hard left, and there's a reason why leftists don't do anything about this. They want this. That's why the borders remain open, and that's why during Obama and Biden's term, Obama 2.0, we've seen massive amounts of migrants because Democrats do not care. I recommend you find the Times this week to read Hannah's story. It is also wrenching, but it offers some reasons for hope about Marco's future. It is also part of a larger problem. The U.S. has allowed millions of people to enter the country in recent years and is failing to care for many of them. We don't need to care for them. They illegally came here. We should just send them back to their own countries and let them try and figure it out. Stop encouraging people to come here and take advantage of our system that cannot support more and is collapsing us. For more, so much suffering, the Times' Gina Belafonte writes about the struggle of New York City schools to care for migrant children. Again, not their responsibility. Deport them. That's what you should do. On a recent, like they did in Martha's Vineyard. As soon as someone tried to get illegals in Martha's Vineyard, immediately gone. Military showed up, kicked them out. They wouldn't even tolerate 50 of them. Not in Obama's backyard. Oh, no, no, no. On a recent episode of The Daily, Nicholas Fandos explains how the migration surge has caused a political crisis in New York. Yeah, because they claim that migrants are welcome until you send them to those sanctuary cities. It's just a virtue signal. Unlike other cities, Los Angeles is not facing a migrant crisis. The high cost of living and lack of jobs has deterred many people from coming. No, they're coming. They're just being crimes. And I mean, in LA, you just go steal. The government won't do anything. Iran freed 5 Americans it held detained on spying charges. In exchange, the U.S. will allow access to $6 billion in seized oil revenue. So we paid a ransom demand. They can spin that all they want, but we paid a $6 billion ransom demand to get 5 people. I'm glad that they're back, but we should not be paying ransom. That's not a good idea. This is going to happen again. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused the Indian government of killing a Sikh leader on Canadian soil in June. He pressed India to cooperate in an investigation. I don't really see that one going too well for him. Castro's kid can't do anything. He has no prestige. Libyans in Derna, the city where the 2 collapsed dams killed thousands, protested against their government. Yeah, they don't really have a government so much as they have warlords, thanks to Obama and Hillary Clinton's horrible policy that set that government on fire and turned Libya into a failed state. Ghana sought help from the International Monetary Fund for its 17th time. Similar cycles of financial crisis and bailouts plague many poor and middle-income countries, which is by design. That's what the IMF is meant to do. It's there just to bleed poor countries dry, send resources to the people at the top, and exploit them. It's one of the most evil scams that exists. An errant Ukrainian missile rather than a Russian attack appears to have caused a deadly blast in a market in eastern Ukraine this month, a Times investigation found. President Biden will urge countries to continue to support Ukraine. In a speech at the UN today, Zelensky, Ukraine's president, will also address the gathering. More. Just keep spending money, keeping this war going. The war could end today. All we have to do is just say no more money to you, and Ukraine would have no choice but to negotiate and end this war. But no, we would like it to keep going because the military-industrial complex profits heavily. Hunter Biden sued the IRS, saying it has violated his privacy by disclosing tax information. Yeah, this is great. I mean, I think it's so awesome that Hunter Biden gets to sue the IRS, sue other people for his... He's also sued people over his laptop that he left at a repair shop with a whole bunch of incriminating information on it. And now he has the audacity to sue the IRS, saying that they violated his privacy by him not following the law that all the rest of us have to follow. Come on. 2-tier justice, actually 3-tier justice system. There's laws for everybody else. There's laws for Republican politicians that are prosecuted entirely different, and then there's the elite who have their own their own separate system where they get to do whatever they want to, and to get slaps on the wrist for these types of things. Look at Sam Bankman-Fried, $100 million stolen to help install Democrat politicians, and that money was illegally obtained, used for nefarious purposes, but we're going to just let all the Democrats he paid for to keep serving, even though it was done by illegal funds. Speaker Kevin McCarthy's plan to avoid government shutdown over spending faces opposition from some Republicans. Yeah, because they're going to continue to fund all of the massive boondoggles, so there's a handful of people standing up saying, no, we shouldn't do that, but McCarthy will cave. U.S. national debt has exceeded $33 trillion for the first time. It was the first time when it exceeded 31, 32, 33. It was the first time when it hit 20. I mean, it just keeps going up. It's not going down. Ken Paxton, Attorney General of Texas, survived an impeachment vote, but faces Justice Department investigation of many of the same corruption allegations, which is interesting because there's almost no evidence to really support a lot of these things. It was a fairly political attack. Mark Meadows, Donald Trump's former chief of staff, agreed to testify against Trump in the Georgia election interference case. His decision may have backfired. That's also somewhat spinning. Like, that's not exactly what happened, but we'll see what happens with all the political prosecutions of Trump and his lawyers. I mean, it's a horrible precedent no matter what. Senators no longer have to wear business attire on the floor, which is terrible. This just shows, we're going to allow the Fetterman to walk around in his cargo pants and stuff. This is horrible precedent that we're setting. Everybody should be wearing business attire on the Senate floor. This is just absolutely abysmal. 2024 election. Donald Trump plans to speak to striking auto workers in Detroit next week instead of attending the second Republican presidential debate. David McCormick, a former hedge fund executive who lost the Pennsylvania Republican Senate primary to Oz last year, plans to run again. Jennifer Wexton, a House Democrat from Virginia won't seek re-election after she was diagnosed with a rare, incurable neurological condition. Oh, that sucks. Other big stories. A kilogram of fentanyl was found near nap mats at Bronx daycare center where a 1-year-old died. A kilogram? Wow. The police in Los Angeles arrested a 29-year-old in an ambush-style killing of a deputy. That's good. At least they're doing something there. The auto workers' strike will stress test public approval for unions, which has been rising since the start of the pandemic. Noam Schreiber writes. The wreckage of the lost F-35 jet was found in South Carolina. The military lost track of the warplane on Sunday after the pilot ejected with a parachute. That's just a lie. They did not lose track of it. The moment it's a stealth aircraft. Stealth only works when you have smooth, faceted edges, smooth edges or faceted edges. When you eject from the aircraft, the canopy gets blown off. There's a giant hole in the aircraft, and it's no longer a stealth object. So they knew exactly where it was at. It was just a lie. I don't know why they lied about it or what they were lying about. Why did the pilot eject in the first place when the aircraft was clearly working just fine? It was on autopilot for a period of time. So we need answers to that. And why did and they are also not mentioning they grounded aircraft for 2 days over this. Why? Did the plane get hacked? That's what a lot of people are looking, saying. I don't really believe that because to me, it seems difficult that you would hack a plane that's in the air, but it says it's possible. On Cyprus, home to 1 million free-roaming cats, unused corona treatments are taming a feline virus. Florida officials captured a black bear at Disney World. Like other hungry visitors, she was searching for food. With Congress beholden to the fossil fuel industry, there's no such thing as a fossil fuel. Those are oil is derived from plants. It does not come from dinosaurs. That was a propaganda campaign by the Sinclair gas station company back in the 60s, and it had nothing to do with anything other than just they wanted people to associate dinosaurs with their gas station, and people started associating it with gas, which has nothing to do with anything. The only path to reversing climate change, there is no climate. the climate is changing because it's a geologically active planet. Through executive action on oil and gas projects. So, in other words, tyranny, which is outright illegal, but and there's no reversing climate change anyway. Global boiling, those are all just lies. The blame for the chaos in the House falls not to the most extreme Republicans, but to Kevin McCarthy, who gave them political leverage. That was a good thing where we actually saw that. And you know what it shows? Those Republicans that negotiated with McCarthy, they actually got some concessions out of him. Think back to the Squad. When the Squad was trying to negotiate with Nancy Pelosi, they didn't get anything at all. They just fell in line like the cucks that they are. It shows that the Republicans, at least some of them, have some spine. Look at that, a column by Paul Krugman on Mitt Romney. Yeah, that ought to be funny. I'm not reading that garbage. DNA study, a nomadic clan with a song-like language in Borneo appears to have been isolated for more than 20 generations. The Cafe of Mistaken Orders in Japan, one cafe owner is hiring older people with dementia as servers to help them socialize. Plateau, you won't lose weight on Ozempic forever. Here's why. Yeah, you just exercise. Exercise, eat less. That's the solution. Vitamin C is probably good for you, but it's hard to make it work the way it's supposed to. Let's see. Margaret Chung, the first known American woman of Chinese ancestry to earn a medical degree. Chung died in 1959 at the age of 69. Her obituary is part of Overlooked, a Times series about the lives of remarkable figures in history. Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Browns 26-22 despite just one touchdown from their offense. Stingy defense helped the 2-0 New Orleans Saints stifle the Carolina Panthers on the road. Michigan State told the football coach Mel Tucker it intended to fire him after sexual harassment allegations. The tennis star Coco Gauff embodies perhaps the biggest story in sports, the rise of female athletes. Art and science. Some of the great paintings in the 19th and 20th centuries are losing their brilliance. Many artists of that era, including Van Gogh, Munch, and Picasso, favored a paint known as cadmium yellow, whose bold lemony hue has become faded and chalky. A team of researchers studying samples from Joe Minero's paintings from the 1970s found the paint was doomed by flaws at the atomic level. Yeah, cadmium yellow is an issue. Any kind of cadmium yellow is going to fade over time. So, one of the things with Bob Ross's paintings that unfortunately he loved his cadmium yellow, and it's some of those older paintings, they will not last. Russell Brand postponed the rest of his British comedy tour after 4 women accused him without evidence of sexual assault for some of the charges are nearly 20 years old. Quite interesting. Brand just, a coordinated attack against him. I don't really believe it, to be honest with you. Okay, that's it. Know this day in history today. I guess the 19th is just not a good day. So that's it.